Hello everyone and welcome back to Days Out, and today we're going to be taking a look at some aviation history here at the Museum of Flight in East Fortune. So let's go take a look around. The museum is located to the east of Edinburgh, between East Lincoln and North Berwick. East Fortune opened in 1915, becoming an airship station in 1916 for sea lane patrols. It was from here that the airship R-34 flew to Long Island and returned in 1919, the longest flight in the world at that time. During the Second World War, the base became a training ground and satellite station for RAF Dream. The first pilots came from the Commonwealth and Poland, whilst Coastal Command added a new hangar in 1942. Around the site are the remains of some of the World War II additions, including blast shelters, workshops and bulk fuel installations, whilst the parachute store has been recreated using wartime records. Here, parachutes would have been repaired, stored and packed. Our first hangar is dedicated to military aircraft from World War II to the present day. Now this might look like a Blenheim Mark IV, but it isn't. It's actually a Bolingbroke, which is essentially a Blenheim built under licence in Canada. The Blenheim was intended to be used as a high-speed transporter, introduced in 1936, but later found a use with the RAF as an early bomber. This example is painted yellow as it was used for aerial gunnery training as part of the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. The Spitfire 16E was powered by a Griffin engine with a four-bladed propeller and also had a new tail and gun arrangement. This example entered service in 1945 at the Flying Refreshers School in Yorkshire and later became a gate guard at RAF Alston in Northumberland. A very rare aircraft is the Messerschmitt 163, designed by Alexander Lippisch, who had already produced a series of pre-war tailless gliders. The Me-163 had no undercarriage, being replaced by a skid, whilst takeoff was from a trolley. At the front was a small propeller powering an electric motor. The aircraft was rocket-powered, with a maximum speed of 596 miles per hour, but had a range of only 50 miles and was constructed by Clem and Junkers. This example was captured in 1945 and flown by Captain Eric Brown, the only test pilot to do so using the rocket. It then went to the College of Aeronautics at RAF Cranwell, remaining in their Library of Flight until 1975. During the Cold War, the arrival of US bombers at East Fortune saw an extension to the runway. This also allowed the site to temporarily be used as Edinburgh's airport in 1961, whilst Turnhouse was being refurbished. By the 50s, jet technology was being developed, and representing this period, we have the Meteor NF-14, a night fighter variant, with the longer nose for the radar and the armament removed. This aircraft was designed by Gloucester, but actually built by Armstrong Whitworth, and later worked for the Ferranti Flying Unit based at Edinburgh Airport. Now this might look like a Soviet MiG-15, but it isn't. Like the Bolingbroke, it's actually a copy. It's known as an Aero S-103, as it was produced by the Czech firm Aero Vodachody and entered service in 1956. One of two naval aircraft is this Hawker Seahawk, the F-2 model, with four 20mm Hispano cannons. It flew with 6th Squadron during the Suez Crisis of 1956 in a ground attack role and was later used as a trainer at RAF Abbotsingh and Lossiemouth. The second naval aircraft is a de Havilland Sea Venom, introduced in 1954. This aircraft also saw service during the Suez Crisis of 1956 and later saw active service in Yemen and in Cyprus when that country was trying to gain its independence from Greece. The 60s saw the arrival of this, the English Electric Lightning, designed as an interceptor which could reach speeds of up to Mach 2. The museum's example dates from 1962 and served with 15 and 92 squadrons before being retired in 1977. The Hawker Siddeley Harrier was the world's first vertical takeoff and landing aircraft, enabling it to land anywhere without the need for a long runway. Engine research was conducted by Rolls-Royce using a thrust measuring rig in 1954 known as the Flying Bedstead. The thrust itself was directed by angling the exhausts, either down for lift or backwards for flight. The first prototype, P1127, appeared in 1957, but didn't fly until 1960. An improved version, the Kestrel, followed in 1964, leading to the production Harrier in 1967. The museum's is the original GR1 model from 1966 and is the oldest Harrier in the world. The 70s saw the arrival of the Setcat Jaguar in 1974, designed for the ground attack role. The museum's example is painted in its Gulf War colours, where it flew 40 sorties. The aircraft was retired in 2007. The newest aircraft in the collection is the Panavia Tornado. This is the F3 variant, which saw service from 1986 to 2011. Like the Jaguar, the Tornado saw service in the Gulf, this time on defence patrols, and this aircraft came from nearby RAF Lucas in Fife. The museum started in 1971, when the Spitfire was donated by the Ministry of Defence to the Royal Museum in Edinburgh. As the collection grew, aircraft were relocated to East Fortune, with the museum officially opening in 1975. The Fortunes of War exhibition tells the human story of the RAF, with testimonies, archive film and artefacts, whilst the Fantastic Flight houses a number of interactive displays on aircraft construction, pilot skills and the science of flight. On display is a Napier Nomad, an experimental diesel engine developed by Napier & Sons in 1949. Tested on the Avro Lincoln, it had pistons and a turbine, but was cancelled in 1955 following a switch to turboprops. One of the museum's main attractions is the Concorde experience, which covers all aspects of supersonic flight, from design and construction to crew members. Concorde was the world's first supersonic airliner, capable of flying from Heathrow to New York in 4 hours. Entering service in 1976, Concorde was retired in 2003, and this is the only preserved example in Scotland. The Hawk was an advanced trainer, introduced by Hawker Siddeley in 1976. Exported worldwide, the Hawk replaced the fallen Gnat in 1979. Throughout the world, the Hawk is renowned for its use by the RAF's aerobatic display team, the Red Arrows. They too started on the Gnat, but with an unfamiliar yellow scheme with black fin. The museum's example was in service from 1985 to 2012 and was donated by the MOD. It is also the only preserved example of a Hawk from the famous aerobatic display team. Over in the workshop were a Moraine Saulmier MS-505A, a McDonnell Douglas F4S Phantom Mark II, a Percival Provost T1 and a Blackburn Buccaneer. Outside is a BAC 111 510 ED, a jetliner designed by British Aircraft Corporation in 1961. Originally designed by Hunting Aircraft, the first example flew in 1961, entering service with British United Airways in 1965. UK production ceased in 1982, but continued in Romania until 1989. The ED model was fitted with an extended fuselage and wings, Spey 512 engines and a new cockpit. The de Havilland Comet was the world's first jetliner. Carrying 36 passengers, its first flights were from London to Johannesburg in 1952 by the British Overseas Airways Corporation. Unfortunately, the Comet was grounded in 1954 after 2 broke up mid-flight. The cause was due to the original square windows creating structural fatigue when under pressure. The museum's example is a Mark IV with a longer fuselage and Rolls-Royce Avon engines. Also outside is an Avro Vulcan Mark II with Bristol Siddeley Olympus engines, terrain radar and a passive radar warning system. The Vulcan came about following an Air Ministry requirement for a high-altitude atomic bomber in 1946. It was also the first four-engine jet bomber with a delta wing and the second of the RAF's V bombers. Its development saw a series of miniature prototypes, with the first flight taking place in 1952. Designed to carry free-fall blue steel missiles, the Vulcan's role was later replaced by submarines. Its most famous operations were the Black Buck raids during the Falklands War. These 8,000-mile sorties lasted 16 hours, the longest bombing raids in aviation history. The Vulcan was finally decommissioned in 1984. As well as military aircraft, East Fortune also houses a collection of civilian aircraft from the 1920s to the present day. In the 20s and 30s, de Havilland came up with a number of aircraft as part of their Moth family. This is one of them, the Puss Moth from 1929, with 3 seats and a folding wing. It was in one of these that Jim Mollinson made the first solo east-west flight across the Atlantic, and later flew from Croydon to Darwin in 4 days and 4 hours. The 30s also saw the creation of new airliners and new purpose-built aircraft, such as this, the de Havilland Dragon. This example dates from 1942 and saw service in Australia with the Northern Territory's Aerial Medical Service and later the Reverend Les Nixon, who provided a Christian community service. The Avro Anson started its service career in 1936 with Imperial Airways. The RAF also took an interest, with the Anson becoming its first twin-engined aircraft with a retractable undercarriage which was hand-cranked. In RAF service, the Anson was used as a trainer and transporter, whilst Coastal Command also found a use in the anti-submarine and search and rescue roles. Nicknamed Faithful Annie, 11,000 were built for both the UK and overseas, being retired by the RAF in 1968, ending its service on charter and excursion flights. The museum's example is a C-19, of which 264 were built for communication and transport work. This example, however, ended its duties on aerial reconnaissance sorties in the UK and Northern Ireland. The General Aircraft Cygnet was introduced in 1936 and was the UK's first all-metal light aircraft. Only 11 were built, but it was adopted by the RAF as a trainer in 1942, and this example was flown by the famous squadron leader Guy Gibson of the Dam Busters fame. The Miles M18 Mark II of 1938 was also considered as a trainer for the RAF, but this never materialised. In 1948, Brian Eilers purchased this aircraft, and with it he won numerous air races from 1956 to 61. During the 1940s, plans were put in place for civil aviation after the war for the UK and overseas. One result was the Dove 6, drawn up by the Brabazon Committee in 1942. 500 of these aircraft were built from 1946 to 67, with this example being based at Stansted for licence training and air traffic control collaborations. This tiny little aircraft is a Durin Turbulent, a home-built microlight powered by a 1.5 litre VW engine. As if to illustrate how homemade this aircraft is, the fuel gauge is a simple knitting needle with a cork float. The Islander was designed by Briton Norman, founded on the Isle of Wight in 1953. Their first aircraft failed, but their second was more commercially successful in Western Europe, with 1,200 built. First flying in 1965, production started in 1967, with inter-island operations starting in the same year. One of these was from Westray to Pap Westray in the Orkneys, the shortest commercial flight in the world, with a record flight of just 53 seconds. As well as commercial flights, the Islander has also been used as an air ambulance from Lerwick and Kirkwall to Glasgow, and on fishery protection and anti-terrorism sorties. The museum's example started life as an air ambulance in Germany in 1977. It was then used by parachute clubs in England and Scotland, ending its days with the Scottish Air Ambulance. In 1955, the Beech E-18S entered service with the Scottish airliner Logan Air. With a range of 1,460 miles, it was ideal for long-distance flights from Glasgow to Norway via Aberdeen, delivering newspapers to Stornoway, and as a long-distance air ambulance. The Twin Pioneer Series 3 was a general-purpose aircraft designed by Scottish Aviation at Prestwick. First flying in 1955, 89 were built and used by the RAF from 1956 to 68. One advantage of the Twin Pioneer was its short takeoff and landing capabilities, leading to widespread usage in Persia, Malaysia and Borneo. The museum's example served with the RAF in Borneo, later flying aerial surveillance sorties from Staverton in Gloucestershire. It came to East Fortune in 1982. The B-8 Jetstream 3100 was developed by Handley Page in 1967 before their takeover by Scottish Aviation in 1970, with 26 going to the RAF. Scottish Aviation became part of BAE in 1977, who continued with the Jetstream, eventually totalling 386 aircraft. The 3100 appeared in 1980, with the name being adopted universally for the type in 1993. Another microlight now, and one of the newest aircraft in the collection, is the Icarus C-42 from 1996. 1,200 of these aircraft were built, and this example was owned by the Scottish Flying Club at Strathaven from 2004 to 2010. So that concludes this episode of Days Out and the end of the whole trip to Scotland. Hope you guys have enjoyed the videos as much as I've enjoyed making them, and I'll see you all on the next Days Out. Bye for now.